warm welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Sophie Lambin, and I'm the editor partner for the Women's Forum for the Economy and Society. We are all eagerly anticipating an evening of glamour and purpose-driven revolutions. But before we begin, it is my great pleasure to introduce Audrey Cherkov, the newly appointed Managing Director of the Women's Forum. Audrey's leadership at the Positive Economy Institute and now at the Women's Forum centers on inclusion and impact. For the last 2 months, she has been listening thoughtfully to our partners and community to make the Women's Forum an even more ambitious, inclusive, and purposeful platform for impact. Audrey, welcome, and congratulations for your appointment.
Thank you very much.
So Audrey, if I may, I wanted to ask you that short question. The Women's Forum series of Fireside Chat with the New York Times, in her word, is all about what drives leaders and how purpose factors in. Can you share a few words on what drives you and inspires you the most about leading with purpose?
So first of all, I'd like to say that it's a real pleasure to be here today together with the New York Times, Sophie, and with the very talented woman that we are just about to meet. Diane von Furstenberg is a pioneer in her industry and a role model to many women and young women. So to answer your question, the world needs to be changed. Women need to be empowered, and we need to fight for diversity and inclusion. We all know that. But for that, we do need leadership. And I would say that leadership is probably one of the things that drives me the most. And the fight for women's rights and gender equality has always been really one of the core focus of my work, and never before has the subject been so important. You know, the impacts of crisis are never gender neutral, right? And now we know that COVID-19 sets gender equality back a generation. Yeah. So the Women's Forum is standing strong today on bringing together corporates, governments, and the public, of course, to spark a real change on a grand scale. And what we need to do is to give women a floor to speak loud. And this is what we are just about to do.
Thank you so much, Audrey. We are so honored to have you and that you have chosen to lead the Women's Forum. So this is the beginning of many more conversations that we will have with you. So thank you. So now on to today's Fireside Chat. In our ongoing series, we are delighted to collaborate with the New York Times to highlight women leaders in their own words. What does it mean to be in charge? To be in charge, to lead with purpose, means finding the strength within yourself to acknowledge your own vulnerability and power, and to use it to change the world. These are words that I have borrowed. As today, you will hear from an astonishing woman on half a century of acknowledging, claiming, and expanding our power. You may know Diane von Furstenberg as a designer for women's life, but she's also a giver who knows that sharing a platform results in a bigger platform for all. Also joining us today to talk about claiming and sharing power is civil rights activist Amanda Nguyen, a dynamic and emerging voice who has very successfully advocated for the rights of sexual violence survivors worldwide. Amanda is also, and we're very proud to say so, a rising talent from the 2019 delegations. So our conversation today will be moderated by New York Times gender reporter Alisha Haridasani Gupta. Alisha, we're delighted to have you back, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sophie. And thank you, Women's Forum, for having me. Good evening and good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. I am Alisha Haridasani Gupta. As Sophie mentioned, I'm a gender reporter at the New York Times, and I'm honored to be hosting this dialogue with two generations of female pioneers. Diane von Furstenberg, chief executive and founder of the brand that bears her name, and Amanda Nguyen, a civil rights activist and founder of the nonprofit organization Rise. Let me start with Diane. Just for a second, I'd like us all to cast our minds back to America in the 1970s. That was when a former princess named Diane arrived in the US by ship and invented a wrap dress. It was a fashion item that was sultry, sophisticated, and yet it was affordable, feminine, and yet it was easy to wear. It quickly became so popular that almost every American woman owned one at some point in her life. Diane was selling 25,000 dresses a week. But more than just that item of clothing, her brand ascended at the same time as the feminist movement was sweeping the country. It was around the same time that the Supreme Court decided to protect a woman's right to abortion. It was also the same time when women were flooding into the labor market, getting degrees and jobs and delaying their marriages. The fight for the Equal Rights Amendment was making its way from state to state. There was an electric energy in the air, and Diane's dress became part of that energy. It was inextricably linked with that female empowerment. So Diane, first of all, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very happy to be here. Women Forum, just the words says it all, right? How important it is to have a women's forum, how important it is to join our voices for first to reinforce ourselves and to share for the ones who have no voice or the ones who dare not to speak. So when you're talking about just before, when she said that after COVID, we lost a generation, that is terrifying. Mm-hmm. Terrifying.
Yeah, I know. We will get back to that in a second, but I wanna, sort of keep on this journey of being sort of back in the 70s for a second. Sorry. When you invented that dress, you were what, 23, 24 years old?
24.
What was it like becoming so successful so quickly and becoming a symbol of the female liberation?
Well, it was really a time, I'd come to America. I was married to a prince. Growing up, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew the kind of woman I wanted to be. And through this little dress, I became that woman. And there was this moment of freedom, this moment of, there was this moment of freedom, this moment of women's liberation. Gloria Steinem, Angela Davis, all these people were my idols. And we thought we had invented freedom. We thought we had broken through everything. And when I hear things like we go back or people still question abortion, I mean, it is terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, that brings me to my next question. Here we are today, however, a generation later after your invention of the dress, and globally, more women are now living in poverty than before COVID-19 because they lost incomes. Careers have been derailed. As you said, abortion is back in the Supreme Court. The Equal Rights Amendment is still not the law of the land. What do you make of that? Do you think it's a sign that feminism failed?
No, we didn't fail. And in many ways, we didn't fail. But maybe we took it for granted, Maybe we take it for granted. To tell you the truth, I always worked for myself. So I didn't really personally have to break the glass ceiling. And I was in a part of an industry where it was okay to be a woman. But now, so many years have passed, and I realized how many people have to fight in order to not to be called babe and to be taken seriously. And but the worst, I think, that happened during COVID is the domestic violence. I mean, the domestic violence is just, I mean, I know in France, I mean, they were putting ads in supermarket and in pharmacy so that people can go and complain there because, you know, you couldn't complain. The police were too busy. And but then I heard from Amanda earlier that, you know, when they ask you, when you go to announce that you are raped, the first thing they ask you, what were you wearing? I mean, that is insane, insane. And us women, we are nurturer. So we take care of the kids and we feel bad for the man who abuses because he lost his job. So we are these nurturers. And that's why I think it's really, really important that the first thing that we have to really always convince ourselves is not to be victim, not to take it, fight for against the abuse. So sometimes, yeah.
Sorry, finish what you were saying.
No, that's why, you know, one of the things that I work so hard at also is telling women that the keys are inside you. The strength is inside you. Don't forget it, you know. You can lose your character is the only thing that you have complete control of. You can lose your health, your wealth, your beauty, your family, your freedom, but you never lose your character. And your character is the little house inside yourself that is the core of your strength.
So there was in my research for this panel, one term kept coming up when people were describing you in profiles of you. They kept saying you possess feminine power. Could you help define what that is and what does that mean to you today?
Well, first of all, I think that I didn't realize it so much when I was young, but now I really realize it. I am a daughter of a survivor. My mother, 18 months before I was born, was in Auschwitz. She was a prisoner of war in the worst way. She was a slave laborer. She came back. She weighed 28 kilos, 40 pounds, whatever it is. She wasn't supposed to survive, but she did survive. She wasn't supposed to have a child, and she had me. So it is when she used to say to me, God saved me so that I can give you life. By giving you life, you gave me my life back. You are my torch of freedom. So when you're thrown as a little girl with a torch of freedom, it could be heavy, but I now realize it's so ingrained into me. And that is, you know, all survivors has this in common, that we have to survive, that I didn't answer your question about being the feminine. What did you say? Feminine power?
Feminine power. I've read multiple articles that have described you as having feminine power.
Yeah, well, I am proud to be a woman. I was always proud to be a woman. And I will quote Balzac now. Balzac said, if you doubt your power, you give power to your doubts. So I try to apply that. But, you know, I don't know. Yes, I am proud to be a woman. I have so much admiration, so much respect, so much everything for women because women are so strong and they can change the world. And it is very much important that we all get together. This Women Forum is more important than ever. It is more important that women get together, they align together and save the world, really.
So, I wonder if feminine power and women's strength relates back to what you were saying about women being nurturing, because if you look at the last year, the countries that did really well in containing the coronavirus were all led by women. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Is it because they're nurturing?
You mean
yes,
like the
New Zealand?
Yes, but women are, listen, women sometimes they don't know they're strong, right? And then all of a sudden there's a fire in the house and it's the women, they take one child, two child, they take the money and off they go. I mean, women are like that. And they really do very well in tragedy. They just take over. But I mean, we should be able to practice that, not just when it's tragedy time.
So when you moved to the US, as you mentioned, you were quite privileged, right? You were a princess. There were doors open for you. And as you mentioned, you're an entrepreneur. So you're not necessarily working under an abusive male boss or anything like that. But you've also had your rough patches. You had to shut down your business in the late 70s. You fought cancer. Just last year during COVID, you had to shut down several more stores. So what gives you the strength to keep going? How did you make it through the rough patches?
You know, you just, again, it goes back. I just read this book called The Choice, which is another survivor. Survivors just survive, and you own it. I mean, that's why I wrote this little book called Own It. You just have to accept reality and say, okay, how do I deal with it? And deal with it. And very often when you deal with it with truth, not being a delusional, then you find a way, and then you turn around and you say, oh my God, I can't believe that this all started with something negative. You know, that's just the way it is. You just have to, life goes first, right? What's his name? Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Yes to Life. You have to choose life. So life is before anything else. And you have to do the best. You have to be the best person you can. You have to, I believe in good. I still think that even if there's bad and evil, you have to look at the light, build around the light, and make it brighter.
Does that mindset come from your mom? I want to read a quote that you said in one of your interviews. I am the daughter of somebody who went to the camps with a smile, and that explains everything about who I am. So tell me more about how she taught you this. I mean, this mindset is optimism. It's glass half full.
I know. She never, it's very funny because she used to tell me that when she was arrested, terror prison, then they had to wait.
Oh, sorry, hold on. You cut off for a second. So you stopped at when she was arrested.
She was arrested. She was put in a truck, and then from the truck they went in the military camp until the convoy, and until there were 1,000 people, because they didn't want to waste it. So when there were 1,000 people, they were put back in another truck, and in the train, the cattle train, 6 days into Auschwitz. And my mother always told me, when she was in those 2 trucks, she actually tore a little piece of cardboard and she wrote a note to her parents and she threw it in the street. And to tell you the truth, she said that to me, and I say, yeah. And I didn't believe it at all. After she died, my cousin, who was the son of her sister, came to my house, which was actually my mother's house in the Bahamas, and he left a shoebox full of photographs. And at the bottom of the photographs, there was an envelope that says Lily 1944. And that is my mother's name, Lily. And I opened those and I found the 2 notes. I don't even think that my mother's parents told her that they had found the notes, but her sister saved the notes. And it's in the note that I read my mother saying to her parents, I don't know where I'm going, but I want you to know I'm going with a smile. And I was shaking. I couldn't believe it. And my mother's house is near the water, and I put those back in the box, and I wanted the blue water, and I talked to myself, and that's when I said, I am a daughter of a woman who went to the camp with a smile, and that explains everything. And yeah, that's when I realized that.
So I wonder where you've seen that.
Said, by the way, in all honesty, she also said, I suffered enough for all of you, talking about me, my brother, and our children. He said, you don't need to suffer anymore. I suffered for you.
Right. I mean, I wonder how you've seen or how you've manifested that energy in your life. If you could give us, if you could explain sort of what was the lowest point in your career or your life and where you had to really draw on that strength to pull yourself out?
There are low points all the time. And it's not necessarily, I mean, of course, when the first time that I had to sell my business, I was so, but then, you know, it's just like physical pain. You don't really remember physical pain. You remember, oh, yes, it was hurting, but you don't remember how much it hurt. You go through it and you deal with it. But it's every day. And the one thing that is important to know is that sometimes people think you are at the very peak and you're on the cover of a magazine and you look like the biggest, you know, winner. But that may not be true at the time. You yourself know that you're having difficulties of whatever. So it's important for people to know that. And just at the same time, when people may think, oh, she's a has-been, it's over, that may not be true either. So the most important thing really is to be true to ourselves. That is really what being in charge is. It's a commitment to be who we are. It's a commitment to own whatever we are going through. You own your imperfection, they become your asset. You own your vulnerability, you turn it into strength.
Yeah. There's a moment in your life when you were in a relationship where you said you lost your voice. And this is around the same time you fought cancer. So tell us more about that period of your life.
No. I lost my, oh, yes, no, I know what you mean. I had sold my company, but I sold it well, by the way. I sold it. My children went to boarding school. They were teenagers. When your children are teenagers, you love them, but you don't like them. So they were happy to go to boarding school. I went to Paris. I started a publishing house, and it was all of that. When I came back to America after 5, 6 years, then I realized that I felt I had lost my identity because the people who had bought my brand had really brought it down and it was nowhere what it used to be. And so at that moment, I felt that I had lost my identity. And those were the hardest moment in my life. I was, I think, in my 40s. I felt very, I don't know who I was anymore. I mean, I exaggerate, but you know, you probably wouldn't have known if you saw me then, but that's how I felt. And I was indeed diagnosed with the cancer at the base of my tongue after that. And I thought maybe it because I couldn't express myself. That's something I said.
Right. And you were in a relationship then too, right? Were you married or were you dating?
At the time, I've always been in a relationship, but no, I was when I was in Paris, I was in a relationship with a man that was a writer, and he wanted kind of me to give up all the things that I had been before, and I did it to a certain extent, not completely, but to a certain extent, and the reason I talk about that, and I talk about that in my book, is because it's important for everyone to know that, you know, we all have that temptation at some point. You know, there's a side of all women that sometimes want to be a little submissive. Maybe it's an erotic thing, whatever it is. And, but the truth is, now that I look back, a lot of time has to go back, I never really gave up on myself totally. I kind of pretended sometimes, but I don't think I did.
Yeah. So I wanted to get to, I wonder if you can tell me how you've used your power and platform to help raise other women up. Are there initiatives that you are particularly proud of?
Yes, well, I'm on the board of Vital Voices. Vital Voices is an extraordinary organization that is a network, global network for women's leaders. And it started when Hillary Clinton was First Lady. She went to Beijing to that women's conference, women's leader conference. And when I say leaders, you're not talking about prime minister. You're talking about women in markets, you know, all over the world. I mean, it's you know, small leaders, medium leaders. And she came back, and in the plane back, she said to her chief of staff, Milan Verveer, she said, we can't let this extraordinary energy fall flat like a souffle. And that's when she created Vital Voices. And originally it was a government organization, and now it's independent, bipartisan. And so that I got involved with that. And when I got involved with that, long time ago, 20, 25 years, I don't know, long time ago, at that time I realized that was my thing. And then, of course, when I created the DVF Award, which is something that I created when I hosted the Women in the World conference with Tina Brown. We did that for 10 years. And on the second night, I created the DVF Award. And the DVF Award is, we give money, we give support, we give exposure to these extraordinary men. And that's the mission of this award is, and I was there thinking about my mother, it's women who had the strength to fight, the courage to survive, and the leadership to inspire. And all those women are incredible. I mean, I feel so small and so much in awe of all of those women. And all of those women have remained in my family. I continue to help them. I continue to be in touch with them. Amanda was actually involved. She was a nominee for the award one year. So so then at this point, for me, what I try to do is I try to use my voice, my experience, my knowledge, my connections, and my resources in order to help other women to be the women they want to be. And yes, this is definitely my life cause. And you know, when you were being introduced and the Women Forum, I just think, you know, I have to do more. We have to do more. And every single woman have to do more. But by the same token, it's very important that we do not alienate men. You know, just like we need to bring our masculine force out, we need to bring the feminine force, energy out of men, you know, and it is very important that we do this together. There's a new challenge that, you know, very few people talk about, but that's AI. We're accelerating into a virtual world, but the people who code AI are mostly men, you know, and I'm very friendly with Sam Altman, who's very involved in AI. And I made sure that, you know, within the context of all this programming, they put all the women's stories, all the women author, all the women character, because it is important. If we don't put the female energy into AI, then forget it.
Right, the future is very dark. A common criticism of the feminist movement of the 70s is that it lacked intersectionality. Broadly speaking, women of color were left out of many of the gains. And to this day, there are still structures and policies in place that hold women back. You know, we may carry around tote bags or wear T-shirts that say women's rights or human rights. And it's one thing to be successful in a man's world, but it's quite another thing to really reimagine that world as a space for everyone. And so this is where I really want to bring in our challenger, Amanda Nguyen, a civil rights activist whose mission in the last few years has been really to change that world, to write laws that weren't written for women in the first place. In 2016,
I will say one thing. Yes. I mean, if you say that to Gloria Steinem, she would get very upset because she had a lot of people around her that were women of color.
Yes, I mean, I think it's about the measurable impact, you know, a lot of things that were not done. So in 2016, a few years after surviving rape at Harvard University and witnessing firsthand how difficult it can be to navigate the justice system, Amanda drafted a landmark piece of legislation called the Survivors' Bill of Rights that explicitly protects the rights of sexual assault survivors. Congress passed it unanimously, And in 2019, she was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And if all of that wasn't already impressive enough, she's also training to be an astronaut and dreams to travel to space soon. So Amanda, I admire your strength and ambition and activism. The floor is yours if you want to engage with Diane.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me here. My question to you, Diane, is what has given you hope in this last year? And also throughout your career of being a powerful woman?
Oh, I don't always feel powerful, you know. Do you always feel powerful, Amanda? And you are the
Definitely
symbol. All right, and you're the symbol of power. And I think it's important that we always say that because, you know, so often I wake up in the morning, I feel like a loser. And so, but then I get up and I get going, you know. What was the question?
What has given you hope this year?
Oh, I think nature, you know, I think that this year, again, unfortunately, this year what made the inequality bigger. And that is the big, big problem. If you had a garden, you were really lucky this year because you were stuck at home, but you had a garden. You were close to nature. And I think nature, for me, actually I have always been closer to nature, but I have never been that close to nature. And then on the other side, we accelerated into the virtual world, and that also is very interesting because you can learn, you can read, you can meet, you can do all of those things, and so I have, I don't know. When I don't put the news on, I have hope. I think that, you know, people. And then, but unfortunately, what is terrifying is the culture of lie. I believe in the culture of truth. My religion is to practice truth because with truth, if you're true to yourself, you will be happy. So, you know, to be truth and truth and truth. And when you see that world gets away with lies and things like that, that is incredibly disheartening. I do think that women have to get together more than ever. And I think that, again, like my mother, I'm a survivor. So you have to look at the tiny little bits of light and build around the light to make it brighter. What about you? I'm asking you. What are you hopeful?
You know, I think I still am hopeful, extraordinarily hopeful, despite everything that has happened. And it's because in extremes come out. So we saw some of the worst in humanity, and we also saw some of the best, people coming together despite their circumstances. That gives me hope. And joy and happiness, I think, are a choice. And so I try to remember. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story and your story about your mother, because I really relate. I'm the daughter of boat refugees, and my mother told me I went into death to seek life. And
in Cambodia, they had it bad.
Yeah. She had traveled from Vietnam and then was at a Malaysian refugee camp, and then was able to, she actually encountered pirates in her boat in a tidal wave storm, and made it. Her boat was sinking, and this pirate ship came and saved her. And when I need hope, I think of how she must have felt in that tidal wave storm, you know, and when there's nothing in sight, what gives you the faith to continue? What can push you to think that this is better than what is behind me, that I have to go into something so dangerous? And I think that if people like that.
But she was saved. She was saved.
She was saved.
And that's also another thing that I have learned, is that in the case of my mother, millions of people, but she was saved, right? And she was saved, and because she was saved, there's a whole dynasty behind. So I think it's really important that when we have in front of us so much darkness, you just say, how can I make a difference? What does it make a difference? I mean, just little me, what can I do? Well, little me can do many things. And little me can save, if you can only save one person, you save a dynasty. And you're a result of it. And look at what you're doing. Look at what your mother, I mean, you going to be an astronaut. I mean, I hope, you know, your mother was in that boat. I mean, that is what that survivor spirit that your mother, and it's not just her spirit, she was also lucky, it was her prayers, her mother prayers, who knows what. But the combination of that made her a survivor, that DNA, that extract of survival is what you are. And look at how much you have done. Look at how much you have experienced.
Yeah.
You are
Amanda.
Superwoman, Amanda.
I fully concur. I agree. Amanda, I wonder, you know, your landmark piece of legislation is titled Survivor's Bill of Rights. You know, it is literally taking the legacy of your parents forward to a new generation. Could you tell us more about what that Bill of Rights does and the sort of behind the scenes of how it came together?
Yeah. Actually, Congress wanted to name the law after me, and I said no. They wanted to name it Amanda's Law. And the reason why it's the Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights is because I wanted it to be reflective of everyone and anyone who would happen to unfortunately experience sexual violence. And what the bill entails is a set of very basic civil rights. In the United States, there still exists inequality across the states for rape survivors. Two survivors in two different states still have two different sets of rights. And that's because even if the federal law is passed, we still have states' rights. And so we need to pass it state by state. Mm-hmm. However, what the actual bill does is it protects one's evidence, the rape kit, which is the forensic collection of evidence, as well as life-saving medical attention, from being destroyed. And that's because before my law, untested rape kits were routinely destroyed before the statute of limitations. Beyond that, the law also codifies the right to know your rights, very basic, the right to have access to your own patient medical information. For instance, do I have HIV/AIDS now because my perpetrator? Do I have other STDs now? That's because if the law wasn't actually codified, the law previously did not write in cases of sexual violence. And that is the importance of codifying positively the rights. Another right is the right to not have to pay for your rape kits. So rape kits could cost up to $2,000, and if survivors couldn't afford it, they had creditors calling their homes. So all of this was really egregious, but also people just didn't know about it. One, because it was so stigmatic, and it still is, to talk about rape. Now, this is before Me Too. And I remember when I made the decision to speak publicly about my rape, a lot of very well-meaning people said, oh, why are you doing this? Don't you want to go to space still? Don't you want to have a career? And I want to let everyone know that we are multitudes, that if other people, let's say Elon Musk, can do PayPal and Tesla and SpaceX, then I can be an activist, I can write laws, I can be an astronaut and go to space, and I can wear red lipstick. I can do it all. So I want people to understand that you are so powerful, that the light is already within you. Yeah.
And that actually brings me to the point of intersectionality, which I raised earlier, right? Women's rights also is different from having Asian women's rights, Black women's rights, trans women's rights. It's so many different layers of things. So what's next for you? And I want to start with Amanda and then go to Diane.
Yeah, in February, I turned on this camera and I asked the world to stop Asian hate. And 11.4 million people responded. So I honestly, looking back, I couldn't have predicted that. You know, I've been talking about the violence my community had been facing, and I actually lost followers from it because people actually, even if the audience is progressive, couldn't mesh the two, gender-based violence and racial violence. And it just happened that in this video, I had a call to action, which was targeting the media and saying, hey, can you please cover our stories? And it worked. It worked. And so the next thing for us right now is two fronts. One, continuing the momentum on Stop Asian Hate, and the other is a worldwide survivor bill of rights. That's because the United Nations has never passed a resolution solely on rape before, which is surprising or unsurprising, depending on how you look at it. And there are at least 1.3 billion rape survivors around the world. So it's time, due time, and we are fighting for it, and we hope to get it passed in the next couple of months.
Right. And Diane, what's next for you?
Well, for one thing, I'm going to help Amanda. And you have my commitment, Amanda. And I am going to try. I mean, I'm a much older woman now, so I am going to try to continue and do more. Use my voice. Use all the things that I have, the connections, the means, the voice, the power that you say I have. You know, in order to help women and to tell you the truth, I realize the inequality now more than I ever did before, because in a sense, my mother always said, you're lucky to be a woman, you know, just like my mother is like, her thing was never to be a victim. So no matter anything would be a victim, no, that's a good luck, you know. So I was raised like that, but I mean, as I said, Amanda, we spoke earlier. I mean, the fact that if you go and report a murder, the police, the first thing they ask you is what you are wearing. I mean, that is crazy and it's disgusting. And because it automatically puts the blame on you. And most people don't say when they were blamed, when they were raped, because it's not worth it, because you get through so much humiliation, and then the people around you that like you say, why do you do that? And so really, I mean, Amanda, I admire you so much. And here you are in front of everybody, in front of the New York Times. I commit that I will help you as much as I can.
I'm so looking forward to this wonderful partnership. And with that, I think we can wrap it up and hand it back to Sophie. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time and your thoughtful insights. I think that's all we have time for today, unfortunately, and we were not even able to bring some of the questions we received from the audience. But Alisha, I just really want to thank you for enabling such an intimate and rich exchange. You went deep. We went deep, thanks to you, and thanks to how everyone responded to your question. Diane, I love how you started, really reminding us that the Women's Forum stands for women joining their voices and their forces, and to share its platform to those who can't or don't have it. And thank you for making that commitment just now. I also loved when you said, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew the woman I wanted to be. And I hope that your words will inspire many women to be, as you say, in charge, a commitment to be true to yourselves, to tap into your feminine power, even in low points, to embrace your own vulnerability and turn it into strength. And it was so relatable to hear you, like all of us, get up in the morning and feel very much.
Everybody
powerful.
can relate to that. But that's what I wanted to say. That's why I wrote this tiny little book during COVID. Okay, whatever, own it. Because it's just tiny little words. It's like a dictionary, but you could pick it any time and anywhere. And all it says, it reinforces us to know that it's ourselves, inside ourselves, that we have the keys.
Thank you. And Amanda, if I may, I wanted also to thank you for sharing your own powerful stories of survival. It's so inspiring by how you have turned your experience of vulnerability into change and strength for others. So let me end by saying that I hope that we will all, as you both said, find a piece of light in darkness and build together around the light to make it brighter. So with all that, let me thank you all again, participants and speakers, for being there. If you want to share this great conversation around, the recording will be available soon on this page and on the Women's Forum YouTube channel. As a reminder, you can always share your thoughts and your ideas and reaction using the hashtags Women's Forum, Women's for Inclusion, and In Her Words. And obviously stay tuned for our upcoming sessions with the Women's Forum and the New York Times In Her Words later this year. So with that, let me thank you again and till very soon. Bye, everyone.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you, Alisha.
Of course. We done?
No, we can speak. We can all get